All right, everyone. Today is Pinch Pot Demo. The first thing we're going to do is pull back our bag of clay and get our wire tool. And we're going to get a piece of clay about as thick as a half a pound of American cheese. So about this thick, okay? All right, once we have that, what are we gonna do with the clay bag? Cover it up right away so that no air gets in here and dries out our clay. All right, so now we have this nice slab of clay right here. And what we're gonna do is just gonna use the strong part of the base of my thumb. I'm going to hit the edges until it starts to become round-ish. So now we're going to do the snowball, okay? Think about when you make a snowball. You're going to curve your hand, okay? And I'm going to curve the other hand, and I'm going to kind of pass it back and forth so that the clay is taking on the curve of my hand. See how I'm kind of passing it back and forth, different directions, and you can see the form of the clay is starting to get round. It is not there yet. So I'm going to turn it, and I know a lot of you know how to do this already, but notice how I'm turning it and letting the clay conform to this nice curve of my hand, both my hands. So as you can see, it's starting to get more round and spherical. And now I'm really kind of cupping the form. I'm looking at the form. And seeing it turn into a nice sphere. Now, if you have any dents in the clay, you can kind of just smooth them off with your thumb. Okay, and here's my beautiful sphere right here. Now, this is actually a pretty big piece of clay. So remember, we're going to be practicing before we actually start our actual project. So here is my container of water, which needs to be handy. And here we go. Now, I'm not going to put this clay on the surface at all. I'm going to keep it in my two hands so that this does not get a flat bottom. Okay, so I'm going to immerse my hand into the water. And I'm going to shake it off. I don't want it soaking wet, but I want my hand pretty damp and moist. Now I'm going to get my thumb, and I'm going to insert my thumb in the middle, okay? Now I'm holding on to this sphere with my other hand in that curved position, and I'm pushing my thumb through. I'm certainly not going to go all the way to the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to release it so you can see how far my thumb is. And I would say my thumb is about right here. So I don't want to go all the way through. I might want to go to about a ½ inch before I hit the bottom. Okay, so my thumb is through. Now I'm just going to pull my thumb out so you could see I've already opened up this solid mass of clay. It is already hollow. Now, of course, it is way too thick. So I'm going to moisten my hand up again, not soak it. I'm going to put my thumb back in there, and now I'm going to gently squeeze and turn this form. So I'm really relying on my sense of touch here because I'm feeling the walls. And I'm going to squeeze them from the bottom section so that the clay rises up. So I'm going to stay away from this thin area here until the form rises up. So I'm going to go ahead and put my thumb back in here, and I'm going to turn this clay. Notice this bottom support hand is keeping it nice and round. And all my fingers now are being used to create this form. So I'm pinching and I'm applying pressure. Again, think about pressure. Now I'm just going to hold it open. You could already see that this form is open. Now it's still very, very thick, okay? At this point, I can consider changing my hand position, okay? Maybe I want to put a couple fingers in, turn the form upside down, and maybe now I want to press the form against my thumb. Notice how I'm working in a circular motion, okay? So now I'm really examining my form, and I want it to be as round as possible. So notice I'm squeezing. I'm putting a little bit more pressure from the bottom portion of this form rather than the top. And I'm going around in a circular motion, treating each section of the wall with equal pressure. So if my hands get a little bit over dry, I'm going to moisten them up again. Again, not too wet because you want to be able to control the form. If it gets too wet, you will lose control of the form. Now I can kind of approach this from a different angle. I can put my fingers in this way. And again, I'm going to squeeze the walls gently. And you can see I'm getting a lot of height out of this form. So your goal should be that your walls are even. Now, I can look at this form and see the indentations of my thumb, okay? And I'm going to straighten that out by just pressing on the parts that are sticking up the most. Notice I'm going to turn this form upside down. Here's the curve of my hand that's going to cover the bottom of that. And I'm going to turn this. So now I'm getting my fingers and going in the form. Now I'm going to kind of pull the form down a little bit. So inside of the form, I'm going like this. I'm pulling down the clay. Okay, you won't be able to see my hands inside the pot, but that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get inside of here, and I'm really going to pull that clay down and watch the form kind of pop out. Turning it, pulling it out, turning it, good. Now, what happens a lot is that a lot of times there's going to be a thickness at the bottom here. You want to make sure that that's not too thick. So I'm going to show you how to measure that later on. Okay, but now I'm looking at the form and I can see that it's nice and spherical. I'm going to turn it back so you can see the opening and so you can see this overall form. Okay, now this is pretty thick, so I'm going to go back into that and thin it out. But again, you want the walls of the pot to be the same thickness throughout. And I'm going to show you some other techniques you'll discover. I can just get my thumb and kind of pull the thumb down and stretch the clay this way. But again, my goal, look at this, I'm putting two hands in. And gently pinching, okay, forming, trying to keep this nice and symmetrical. So I'm going to flip it back over, and now I see that the rim is a little bit irregular. It's a little thick, so I'm going to kind of zoom in. I'm only going to pinch the sections that are really thick. So I'm just going to pinch them out. Go around in a circle. Do you remember collaring? Okay. So again, look at how big. This is actually a little bit bigger than we're going to work. I just kind of grabbed too much clay. But you can see that I opened up this form. from a solid and made it into a hollow. So this is a pinch pot. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to check the thickness of the pot. And I'm going to get my metal rib. Okay, I'm not going to keep this pot. We're going to check. I'm going to cut it right in half here so that I could see how I did as far as keeping the walls even all around. So I'm going to open that. Wow, I did pretty well. Okay, so look at the thickness. It's pretty even. Usually the bottom is a little bit thicker, but you can see my walls were nice and even on both sides. Okay, you see how the bottom tends to be a little bit thicker, but that's okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a couple of pinch pots and then we're going to collapse them. So what I'm going to do with this pinch pot, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to clap it together. Tap it down on our surface. And then we're going to do it over again. So we're going to make a few pinch pots in a row and keep practicing. And I'm going to be showing you more little tricks to get that form perfectly symmetrical. Okay, and then we're going to hit the edges of the square. And then I'm going to go back to my what? My snowball. And then we are going to start all over. So this is a pretty big sphere. I want you to start with a little bit smaller sphere. I would say this is the size of a grapefruit. I want you to bring this down to a smaller size apple. Okay? And then we're going to start all over again. All right. Good luck.